WaitingForNextYear.com podcast. It is the WaitingForNextYear.com podcast. Bye-week Browns. Indians are finished. Cavs haven't started. What are we going to talk about, Dave? Dave Sterling.
There's plenty to talk about, I guess. You know, it did seem like a nice break from sports this weekend.
It was really nice, but I was on the Dogs on the Run decided to have their bye-week show anyway. And so I got the text message going, hey, you want to go on at 7:45? And I was thinking, well, I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about, but yes, of course. And so I ended up talking about the box trolls because I saw that over the weekend. We talked about the Steelers choking away a game against the Buccaneers, which everybody seemed to enjoy. But we're not going to, I mean, we should talk about the box trolls because that was pretty good, but we don't have to rehash. There's something weird about celebrating a Steelers loss, even though it did make me happy. I don't know that I want to spend a lot of time talking about it.
Well, yeah, I kind of found out about it afterwards. I was just not thinking football all day, and then
it was almost nice, right?
Yeah, and it popped up on my Facebook feed, and I went, "Oh, well, that's nice."
What did you do during your bye week?
I did all sorts of exciting things. Like mostly, I did a Saturday night late night Uber driving session, so I slept most of the morning. And then did the classic mow the lawn, go shopping for a ceiling fan. So nice. Nothing exciting at all.
Now tell me, is this a new ceiling fan or a replacement?
This is a replacement ceiling fan. And
See, I asked you a follow-up question as if I cared.
Oh, the listener numbers are going to be great on this episode.
Yeah.
As long as you put ceiling fan maintenance in the title block, people will love it.
I've grown to really love the bye week, though. Last year, my wife was out of town with our youngest, so it was just, I guess at the time he was 3, so it was the 3-year-old and myself, and we went to the Great Lakes Science Center, had a night at Chuck E. Cheese. It was a heck of a bye week.
Well, and that's what's so weird is
look at all the fun you can have when football's not dominating your Sunday.
But it never even occurs to me, even after it's suggested by my wife, we could do fun things every Sunday. And I'm like, but there's a Browns game on. I don't know how I could do anything during that. And it doesn't even dawn on me that there's an option of not watching the Browns game. I don't know.
And no matter how miserable they've gotten, and that was another thing last year, whatever week they played Minnesota, was that week 3? I think it was the 3rd week last year.
Yeah.
We were on vacation in Sandbridge down near Virginia Beach, and it's this beautiful place on the ocean with a pool in the backyard, and I've got the Slingbox hooked up to this 42-inch TV, and everybody's kind of one eye looking outside at the ocean and the other eye going, well, it's the Browns. Are we really going to? And then we finally made the deal that we would swim during halftime.
That's a good compromise.
So and they won. So what? Because that was Brian Hoyer's first game. So.
Oh yeah, and it was the last time he threw an interception.
Jinx. What kind of a jinx are you?
Everybody's been talking about this.
No, you're right.
I think they're going to jinx it too, but.
Well, and he's going to have a game where he throws a couple.
Oh yeah.
It's just going to happen.
No, it's so weird because Sports Yelling on Twitter was talking about, okay, now that the Indians are over.
Wait, do you mean WaitingForNextYear.com podcast guest of Tuesday of tomorrow?
Oh, nice. Well, there you go. Future and past guest, Sports Yelling, mentioned something about, there's a QB controversy or something like that. I'm like, well, no, there isn't one. And she's like, well, what do you guys argue about? And I said, well, right now the fan base seems to be, let's book the Super Bowl party, or this team's garbage, I'm going to go jump off the 480 bridge. And there's no middle ground on this team right now. I don't understand that.
Yeah, well, and there should be a lot of middle ground because they are the definition of average, which is an improvement over what they've been.
Right, and
everyone made fun of me when I said that that my standard is to hold them to make 8-8.
And that is an average team, but that's the thing is, like, you've got the people who think 8-8 is going to be good and progress, and you've got people who are like, no, they got to win now, they got to prove it to me, and
Well, and then there are the other people who
they
are
don't
like,
have to prove it to anybody.
like if they go 8-8, but they don't do it in the way that I think is predictable. Like I expected this defense to be good, and if the defense isn't as good as I expected,
Right.
but the offense is better, and they still win the same number of games because they're unpredictable, and I didn't see it coming, that sucks too.
Right.
So it's this really weird thing, man. You know, well, they spent all that money on the defense. Imagine if they hadn't blown it on guys who didn't play well. Yeah, did they win enough games or not?
Yeah, I don't get the whole. I enjoy watching, even when it's painful sometimes, but never does it get to the point that I feel like I'm owed something. I don't know. I don't particularly. I mean, the product on the field is important that they're, putting together something that will eventually win a Super Bowl. That I'm fine with, but half of it for me is, hey, there's a guy in a Browns shirt. I know if I get stuck in an elevator with him, I'll have something to talk about. It's just like an instant membership.
But so are you Browns first in terms of your sports hierarchy?
Yes, I am.
See, because as we were talking about that and judging irrational Browns fans, I'm thinking, well, I'm kind of a dick when it comes to the Tribe. I've just reached this point where, in fairness to the Tribe, that phrase doesn't exist to me anymore.
No, exactly.
And I know it's unreasonable, and people call me out on it, and I kind of only half care.
Well, me too. And I wrote a thing, this is how old it is, in 2007 when they lost to the Red Sox in the playoffs, where pretty much they gave away their trip to win a World Series because the Rockies were not good at all.
Yeah, that was their shot.
Right. I wrote on my MySpace blog at the time a pretty long letter of, you know what, I put up with a lot of stuff for a while, and I really didn't mean to stick to it this hardcore, but I'm like, I can't invest in you that much anymore because they just clearly had something and just blew it. And then this year, I followed them all along the way. I saw the record pitching they had. I knew they had some offensive struggles, but the thing that bothers me as someone who's played Little League is the defensive errors. It's like, those are the things you think you should be able to fix. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and it was almost historically bad defense.
And that's where I would never say anything bad against Terry Francona, but who's in charge of making sure they field grounders and stuff and do some pop
at this
fly
level
practice,
though, do you really think it can be coached at this level?
Well, I wonder this every year during the World Cup, and more so when we were worse at soccer. You're telling me that we couldn't find 20 better guys in the whole country? Like, I know the path to be a major leaguer is tough, but you're telling me we can't find a guy that can make that play and be a mediocre hitter?
Well, and I guess that's my point, though, is I think hitting coaches and pitching coaches do make a difference because they're tweaking and they're analyzing tape and making small adjustments. But you can't analyze tape and make small adjustments with defense other than positioning, right?
Well, I do have one.
You need to catch ball gooder and throw it gooder too.
Well, I'm gonna defy you on this one because Lou Brown was able to turn Roger Dorn into a solid fielder.
Yeah. So.
Not even a chuckle? Come on.
Is that where this conversation's going? He also taught him how to lean into a pitch. So.
That's true too.
And I wish a number of Indians had leaned into more pitches this year.
It would have only taken a couple of pitches to be in the playoffs at this point.
Yeah. And you know what? And this is where it's totally unfair because in the preseason predictions, when it came down to it, and I saw all the Indians' offseason moves and what they were bringing into spring training, my prediction, I believe, on Waiting for Next Year was 87 wins.
Yeah.
And so it's like they didn't even miss my expectations, and I'm still kind of just salty and pissed off about it.
Well, when it gets to be that close, when it gets to be, it ended up being 2 games because they lost their last game.
But there are a lot of people on Twitter who would tell you that they only played 2 meaningless baseball games all year. If this isn't a successful season, if you didn't enjoy this, then you're doing it wrong, is basically what they're saying. And I don't even know that they're wrong, except that that's just not my experience.
Well, this is probably going to make future and past guest sports yelling and the very excellent Indians Twitter people. But last year, they milked that 3 hours of playoff baseball we had as the best thing that's ever happened. And it was just one painful game that brought back all the memories of playoff baseball that I had before, and that we lost that game and didn't advance.
I milked it too, though. I was pumping it up, and I was telling everybody that yes, it's a playoff appearance. Yes, it counts. Yes, it's awesome.
Oh, it counted. It just didn't happen for very long.
No, that's true.
The fact that there were T-shirts that were obsolete after one day. I mean,
no, that's absolutely factual. There's nothing that I can say that makes that untrue. But I can't really hold that against them so much. And that's the problem too, is that ultimately you can only hold so much of general MLB distaste against the Indians in particular.
right.
But I do wonder, and everybody constantly wants to defend the Indians by comparing them to every other team in town. But I do wonder if they had switched out Mark Shapiro and Chris Antonetti once in the last, 10 years, would people have a different level of patience, or does it tie directly to ownership? We just have no idea.
It's a good question because, yeah, we've had way too much turnover in the Browns.
Way too much turnover.
At some point, they should have picked
But that's not a defense of the Indians, by the way.
No, that's true. That's true. No, I know what you're saying. It's like, I guess they've done enough between, well, I see, it's tough to say because they can play small market all they want, but Detroit isn't a big market.
No, but they might as well be with their owner spending that way.
Well, but we had Dick Jacobs who did spend that way, and that's what everyone...
But did he? He really didn't. Baseball spending exploded league-wide at some point.
That's true. It was a different time.
When Manny Ramirez took off, that was kind of the beginning and height of the arms race between the Yankees and Red Sox, which just changed the entire complexion of Major League Baseball payrolls.
It is satisfying that neither of those teams will be involved in any sort of playoff.
It is.
But again, that's just...
Especially, how nauseating would the Derek Jeter playoff run have been?
Oh, jeez.
Did you hate that as much as I did? Was I being kind of dickish?
There are two... I don't know if I'd go as far as dickish. The biggest point you had that I
dickish isn't really that bad. Let's be honest.
The biggest point that I really agreed with you on is you're celebrating that he happened to have played with the Yankees his whole career because the Yankees had the money to pay him. I agree that was silly. Now, I kind of like when they go around the league and they when they just give him the little gift, or was it Rivera that they gave the chair that they made out of broken bats?
Yeah.
And I kind of like that baseball does stuff like that. But then the thing at the end with the respect T-shirt and
with the
all
number
that,
2 in it.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I understand New York is a giant market, but you don't need to show me that commercial here in Cleveland. I honestly don't care. And it's cool that he played there for a long time. Now, I think Keith Olbermann really went overboard.
But he goes overboard with everything.
That's his deal, but I think...
I thought it was hysterical because, he's the kind of guy, if you agree with him, it's awesome, and if you don't, you hate it.
Well, I was cool with his bit for 4 minutes, and then after that 4-minute mark, I'm like, you're putting too much into this. That's what I thought. My whole stance is indifference, and if you've gone to the trouble to research all this stuff, you're just switching it over to hatred. And
see, and that's more like how I used to be in my real life too. It's like, I would not only get pissed off at the municipality I lived in for their tax the amount of local taxes they would charge me. Then I would research the local financial plan, see how much they were paying the mayor and everybody else, and I'd compare it to other municipalities directly next to me, and then I'd get all ticked off all over again. And meanwhile, what am I going to do with that information? You're either going to move or you're not.
Right.
Anything, or you're going to run for office, which is not going to happen. So, I've got way too many words in audio format and in print to ever run for anything, because I'm sure
that dickish stance on Jeter is not going to win you any votes.
You're damn right it's not. Or it's going to win me all the votes.
All the votes.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah. No, we got ourselves to Jeter.
We did get ourselves. I wonder what kind of ceiling fans Jeter has.
They whatever they are, they're in a configuration that's so specialized that when the fan is turned on medium, that it displays the face of Jeter.
I looked at that one; it was expensive.
All right, so you drove the Uber for your bye week.
It was I had.
Is that how you say it? You drive the Uber?
That's how I think older people would say it. And I think we're about the same age, so it's not,
I'm a 35-year-old gentleman.
I'm 34, so we are pretty much the same age. So, I had my first ride refusal.
Whoa!
I got.
What kind of car do you drive?
Ford Fusion.
See that?
No. Oh, no. They didn't refuse. I refused.
Oh, okay.
They had placed the pin, and ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening and you take an Uber, before you drop the little pin, make sure that's where you are. That's a big, big issue. This guy was about...
My one and only ride with Uber, by the way, I not only dropped the pin, I zoomed in so that I dropped it on the correct side of the building.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So this guy dropped it about a block from where I was, which is just in a neighborhood in Lakewood, but they were about 6 or 7 minutes away at the Hairy Buffalo in Lakewood.
Oh, so they dropped it where they were going to be?
I'm not sure where they dropped it, and maybe they let the super drunk guy drop it, because I finally sit outside this house. They probably think I'm like gonna case the joint to rob it. And then I call, and they said, "Oh, yeah, we're at the Hairy Buffalo in Lakewood." And I said, "Oh, well, you put a completely different address in the PIN, so that's where I am." "Oh, well, we're at the Hairy Buffalo in Lakewood." And I should have just at that point canceled and found another ride. But so I drive over there.
I would have done that too. I would have driven over there as well. God.
That's how I am. I
think
as long as they're
you and
not
I think you and I are similar temperament, similar levels of, like, we'd feel guilty.
Right. Well, and I had to temper that a little bit, because when I got there were two guys standing outside the Hairy Buffalo. They walk over to my car. Well, one of them walks over, and the other one stumbles over to my car. And I haven't unlocked the doors at this point. I roll down my window, and a very nice man hands me a $20 bill and says, "He's your ride. He needs to go back to North Royalton." And he can barely stand there without falling over. And
so at best, you're going to end up with vomit in your car.
Well,
at worst, you're going to have to call 911 and have an ambulance resuscitate him.
Exactly. So I go, "Wait, you're not going?" No, you just need to take him. I live up here. And I said, I don't know. Is he going to puke in my car? "Oh, no, he's not a puker." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry. If you're not going with him, I don't feel comfortable taking him." And I hand him his $20 back, and I cancel the ride. And I sent an email to, he said, "I understand. I apologize." But I said, like you said, the best case scenario is I have to drag his unconscious body out of my car, but I am probably legally responsible for this person at that point, and I don't need that at this point.
I mean, I think most people know in my real life I do something with insurance.
Yes.
And while I know that's not like a sexy existence and I don't like to talk about it all the time, it does not cloud my overall judgment. It influences my overall judgment to think about liability probably way too much. And you're damn right I'm going to avoid that liability of the drunk guy who can barely stand up on a 25 to 30 minute ride.
Yeah,
That's too long of a ride. If he needed to go
Yeah.
10 blocks to Ohio City or not
Right.
10 blocks, but whatever, 10 minutes to Ohio City, I would have taken him.
Yeah. But at this point,
Would you have taken him to Ohio City? Or were you set on refusing no matter what?
at this point, I would have taken him if the other guy would have ridden
Okay.
along. And I even would have brought him back up to Cleveland off the meter at
Yeah.
that point, because picking up a ride in Lakewood I'm not going to get any rides in North Royalton at 1 a.m. So I would have taken him along as his guardian, no problem. But the point was driven home as I was making sure the ride was canceled, because this guy wandered back over and was peeing on the side of the building by the time this transaction was finished. So I think he understood.
Dear Lord.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah,
Were you and I the ones who talked about public peeing? Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
All right. Come in full circle.
Yeah.
Which reminds me, did you read that story about the guy who was kicked out of, I think it was Willoughby Brewing Company, but a bar in Willoughby for peeing on some customers in the bar.
Why
He was
would
kicked
anyone-
out and then he was arrested outside.
Not sure why he would do that.
No, I can kind of understand the public, the public parking lot pee,
Right.
but when you're in a place that has indoor plumbing,
Yeah, just use it. I mean, you're a guy. The line's not going to be that long.
and well, anyway,
I assume it's a guy.
I think it was, yes, but so
Now,
anyway,
the other story
okay,
from that was I got a ride from some people at the Nine, the hip new
oh yeah,
building downtown, and
VIP type folks hang out there and live there.
that's what I've been told. So when I pull up, the guy of the couple was super excited because I have the Browns license plates.
Okay,
And so he got to talking to me about Brown stuff, and we agree on our Johnny Manziel philosophies, which is good. But then
and meanwhile, he might have just been partying with Johnny at the Nine. Who knows?
he mentioned that Johnny lived there, and I said, "Oh, did you see the thing that Josh Gordon posted that he likes it, but he doesn't have he wouldn't live there because he doesn't have a balcony or something like that?" I guess that was just a slight friendly dig at Johnny Manziel, because I guess he has the penthouse there, and I guess people on the team kind of rib him that it doesn't have a balcony or something like that.
Well, I've heard there are 4 penthouses up on that top floor, but anyway, go on.
But it was just funny that this guy was completely in tune and I thought I was the crazy obsessive guy that follows all the Browns players.
Oh yeah. No, everybody does. And that's something that you and I talked about that we wanted to discuss, and something that I've talked about, I think, with others on this podcast at times, and that's just what it's like to follow these guys on Twitter and kind of how you should react to them if you're going to interact with them. I don't hardly ever tweet at anybody. Do
Right.
you?
I did once, and this is my only interesting Browns social media story, is for my
Wait, hold up. It was Ryan Pomprion, wasn't it?
No, but I did Photoshop him getting into the Hall of Fame a couple years ago. I like to spend some time with my
Imagine if you used your powers for good instead of
yeah,
evil.
I know. Well, so my fantasy football team, Phil Taylor,
This is a guy who can Photoshop. He's driving an Uber.
Phil Taylor is probably my favorite player on the Browns. A lot of it came from actually watching him on Instagram and stuff like that. And he's got a couple of really cool English Bulldogs and stuff like that. So for fantasy football this year, I wanted to have something to do with Phil Taylor. So my mind starts chugging, and I think, oh, well, how about Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince? So my fantasy team is the Uncle Phil Taylors. And then, so I made a logo for that, which I photoshopped Phil Taylor's head onto Uncle Phil's body with Will Smith there. And it came out really good. And so I tweeted at him, hey, this is my logo for my fantasy team. And I don't know if he saw it there. And I also posted it in the Browns subreddit. And then a couple weeks go by, and I'm browsing through my Instagram, and Phil Taylor Instagrammed my photoshopped picture that I did.
That's awesome.
And said, you guys are crazy. And so I then went right back to the Browns subreddit and said, hey, Phil Taylor, remember when I showed you guys this? Phil Taylor Instagrammed it. And someone said, so he either read your tweet or, holy shit, he reads this. And that was just a whole different... Do you think the Browns players go in and read the subreddit about themselves?
Well, first of all, I got to say, I'm a big fan of the Browns subreddit. Those guys rule.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think some of them probably do, or they just end up, somebody tweets something from there and they see it by accident. I don't think anybody really, like, I don't have an RSS reader anymore. I don't read anything except what shows up in my Twitter feed.
Right. Well, and so essentially after I found he Instagrammed it, and then the Cleveland Browns retweeted it and stuff like that. And it went somewhat Browns tweet viral for a while, but I was never able to actually claim it as my own until now. Publicly, I'm doing that. So.
Well, and even now it's just alleged. I don't even know if you have Photoshop skills.
Well, I will send it to you so you can put up with this podcast post. It also got me into Ben Tate's fantasy league, but I was not available for the draft, so he just sent me an autographed picture instead. That was pretty cool.
That dude was like made for Cleveland. The way he came in here and
he jumped in with both feet.
Yeah, very similar to Baron Davis. When Baron Davis ended up here as a draft pick purchased by Dan Gilbert.
Yeah.
He was like, "Oh yeah, I know how this thing works," and he became like, Junior Joe Hayden or something.
He's one of those people that after they leave, I still follow.
Right.
I would be very interested in an app that just, if they're no longer on the Browns or the Indians or the Cavs, that it just automatically deletes them, because sometimes I forget.
Well, and that's what I really need, is I need somebody to set up the lists and keep them up to date, so that like once Spencer Lanning is gone, I won't have to follow him anymore. You know, because by the time he's kicking for the Raiders as a 38-year-old, why would I care about Spencer Lanning?
Right.
But you're not gonna keep up with your follows and your lists. It's just too hard.
There's a lot going on there.
So
it's a tough life we live.
Which I know. It's like, if we need something other than first world problems to describe this.
Yeah, that's even a subset of the first world problems.
But this brings us to everybody's good friend, good buddy, friend of the Browns, former Cleveland Brown, street free agent, I believe at this point, Greg Stonehands Little.
Yeah, that's what I prompted earlier, this discussion with you. And he is actually kind of an interesting character in my mind. And so I kept following on a couple of things, and I find it so surprising that...
Can I preempt you for a second? Because the coolest thing about him as a Browns character is how much everybody rooted for that guy to kind of figure it out and get it, and then they just despised him.
Right. No, because even coming into this year, across from Josh Gordon, you're like, you know what? I think he could really make a jump this year. And then he was just gone, and it turned into, now what? Let me tell you how I really feel.
Yeah. Well, and then he joins the Raiders, and he says, I got the Browns circled. And then he got cut. He didn't even make the team.
Yeah, and so he'll post some pictures every once in a while, and you'll see, like, the top comment, and this isn't ranked, it's just whoever happened to be there first, goes, "Oh, you suck, Stonehands." And it's like, you're really holding a grudge over the guy literally has to figure out what to do with his life now. Better let him know how much he can't. You think he doesn't know he can't catch very well? He lost both his jobs.
Well, and it's funny because And on the one hand, I think that's hysterical, but on the other hand, I'm the one who kept writing on Waiting for Next Year. Look, this guy worked his tail off. I mean, he was Mr. Jugs Machine. Nobody wanted to catch the ball better than he did. He just couldn't figure it out. And so I'm on both sides of that line.
There's always the Browns barometer of what do we think of him and what does the rest of the NFL think of him. And once you get cut from the Browns and you get picked up elsewhere, okay, maybe they were something. But a lot of that Homer talent evaluation we do really gets shown when, oh yeah, he lasted through training camp and that was it. On the Raiders, a terrible team.
Well, yeah, and yeah, man, to not make the Raiders is pretty spectacular in a bad way. And it's not like he even made, FU kind of money.
Right.
He made more money than you and I will probably make in a career, but in terms of NFL money,
no, he never got to that big contract. He was on his rookie deal, and
his guaranteed money in his rookie contract, I'm looking at it, it was $1.6 million. And I'm not saying anybody should feel sorry for that guy, but these guys.
But he's going to have to tell that story every time he meets someone at his next job, which he will have to get.
And he's only 25.
Yeah.
And what's he going to do?
Yeah.
I remember I think it was a 30 for 30, and they were I can't even, this is really bad, but I can't even remember the receiver's name, but he was a superstar receiver for Alabama. And he had one of those leg breaks that you can't unsee.
Oh, yeah, I don't like those.
And so then he didn't make it to the NFL draft, didn't make it out of college football. And so he's now like a bank teller down in Alabama near the school. And that's almost better because it's like I never made even that one paycheck. But you make you get that second round money, that guaranteed money, and you kind of assume you're going to be able to play well enough to get that second contract at least.
You live the rich lifestyle for a while. Yeah.
So like even if I'm going to bust out, I'll at least be able to stay in the league for 5 or 6 years and make another 5 or 6 million after my rookie deal.
A guy who works for the software company and a big piece of software we use played offensive line at OU and said that he had talked with a couple of teams and there was thought he was going to be kind of a late round O-line prospect. But there was hope of him getting drafted or at least being a practice squad player. And then the last couple of games of his college career, he hurt his hand. And I guess O-line wise, you hurt your hand, you drop off the list unless you're super outstanding. And so he just kind of said, well, I better buckle down and finish this engineering degree. And he did. And he's really good at what he does now. But yeah, you're right. It's almost better to have never been than get the taste. Because
and I'm gonna give everybody the name. It was Tyrone Prothro, Prothro, and he was born in 1984, so he's only 30 years old. But he suffered that injury in 2005. He tried to play again in 2007, but he could never play again.
That's sad. But again,
so now he works as a bank teller in Tuscaloosa,
and I bet he can be happy doing that, But yeah, if you've got that, you had that one chance and you just kind of blew it, especially if you take it to a couple of specific plays with the Browns that happen to be of particularly horrific drops, that he just catches a couple of those and he doesn't have the ire of the front office and all that.
Well, and we're talking about a guy, Greg Little had some decent games.
Yeah. Absolutely, he did.
He was fantasy fool's gold a couple of weeks for around the NFL.
I started him as one good week last year. I warned you that I was the ultimate Browns homer fantasy football player.
Yeah, you did. It sounds like you play in local leagues.
I just play with one league with some friends.
I was so hard up on running backs that I did pick up Crowell.
Oh, you're one of the Crowhoes?
I am, but I also play in a league where nobody knows him.
Nice. See, that's the thing is I have other Browns fans in the league, so I had to trade for Josh Gordon.
The majority of the people in my league are Jets fans, which is the most phenomenal thing in the world.
Boy, that's a good league to get in too.
Yeah, because they're all like, well, Sean Green. A couple of years ago, they were like, Sean Green's not so bad. He might be good. It's like, all right, you enjoy your Sean Green.
I like people who assume that the guy that's starting behind whoever's injured, they're going to get the bulk of the carries. So obviously they're going to put up numbers. It's like, no, not just because they get that. I mean, that's...
I just looked up Greg Little's stats because we were talking about him, and it reminded me. I'm looking at the game log from 2013, and I'd forgotten that those idiots, those absolute dummies. I go back. Chud and all his crew deserve to be fired. All of them. They didn't deserve a second year because they let Greg Little return kicks.
Oh.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and he would get him like 7 yards deep and return him to the 16.
Who thought that was a good idea? Who?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, we're at 35 minutes. Is there anything that we talking about that we didn't talk about yet?
We had our Indians lament. I would like to spend at least another 15 minutes on ceiling fans.
Okay.
Maybe that'll be like a bonus episode.
Well, here's the deal. Do you prefer flush mount or do you like them extended down a little bit? I guess it depends on your ceiling height, really.
I'm in an old house, lower ceilings. I got to be flush mount.
Yeah. You know what? I prefer flush mount anyway. Why would you waste all that extra space?
Yeah.
Makes the room feel smaller if your ceiling fan hangs too low.
People have already stopped the podcast at this point, so I am going to say this. I found out, you ever meet people you were talking about how you look at things with a certain amount of an eye on liability based on what you do.
Yeah.
We talked to a ceiling fan and lighting salesman we said, our current ceiling fan, it's okay, it just doesn't give off enough light. And this guy got set off on this ridiculous, almost angry tangent about, well, the government just classified ceiling fans as appliances, so now you're not allowed to put, by law, a light over 180 watts. That's not going to give you enough light at all. So if you're looking for light, you better just put in a light fixture because you're not getting it with a ceiling fan. And just kind of went off on this. It was good information to have, but we were like, sorry, man, I didn't pass that law. I just want to buy a ceiling fan.
Well, that's a really obscure law to go off on.
Right.
Government can't get anything right. Whenever they get their hands on anything, they ruin it. You know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying?
That affects that guy a lot. But for me, this is the one time in 4 years I have to think about a ceiling fan. So
he's gearing up to bitch about LEDs.
Thanks, Obama.
Can't believe. What's wrong with the good light bulb? We had it for 50 years.
Like he just pictures that the president's sitting there with the cabinet and he's going, I know. Let's screw up ceiling fans. Ha ha. And he signs a bill and throws it out.
Pretty soon we're going to mess with cabinet hardware and clutches. Oh, no! Restoration Hardware is out of business.
But I don't think my life would change at all if hardware went out of business.
Yeah, mine either. Yeah, that's like one of those things that you see on HGTV if you happen to watch that. And you're like, I didn't even realize that. I mean, that store, I don't know if you're familiar enough with the east side of Cleveland up here, but that store is in Legacy Village.
Oh,
and
yeah.
if they can pay Legacy Village rent selling cabinet clutches and door handles,
Yep.
then I shouldn't be paying that much for cabinet clutches and door handles.
Right. Somebody's making out too well on that.
At some point, I don't begrudge anybody a living or a profit, but certain things, I don't see where the markup comes from.
Well, that's the thing it's dumb, and this is a dumb topic. Well, it's not a dumb topic, but it's a dumb switch of topics too. Okay, they found a way to make people want a brand of cabinet handle you want. And I was saying this after hanging around with some of my nieces and nephews. Whoever it is at Nike who got kids to think that certain socks were cool and were worth $20 so they could pull them up and have the cool socks.
Yeah.
That guy probably got given a private jet by Nike, because that's just $1 billion idea. It's like, hey, why don't we put a couple of stripes on the socks, and then the kids will want those too.
Well, what's really funny is that I am a runner, and I have found that there are a couple brands of socks that truly are better, but they don't have that coolness in the branding.
Right. No, I've got certain socks, that are more.
You pay extra money for like the really nice functional knit socks.
Right.
But if they could master the coolness too, if Nike could make quality that also had the coolness of Nike, they could charge $100 for socks.
To see kids with pulled up black socks.
I know, right?
It's like, you look like.
We used to make fun of grandpas for that.
Right, exactly.
Oh man.
But somebody went, let's convince kids that this is what they need to do now.
Those are the kinds of kids that I call whippersnappers with an H. Whippersnappers.
I don't offer them a Werther's original.
There's no H in Werther's, you son of a bitch. You put an H where there wasn't one. Oh.
There is an H in Werther's. It's just not where I put the emphasis on.
Well, I think the H in Werther's is the perfect place to stop.
No, I have a few more things on ceiling fans I need to get out.
I was gonna take that into a conversation about the Cavs' war against ticket scalpers, but I just don't even have the energy anymore.
We'll do that next week.
Yeah, we're at 41 minutes. Thanks so much, Mr. Demoko on Twitter, Demoko, Dave Sterling. You did not appreciate the Sean Marion podcast intro?
No, I did. I really liked it. And if you want, I can do my Charles Barkley horrible impression, but that one was legit. So
No, I want you to do Frank Caliendo doing Charles Barkley, doing the podcast intro.
Hi, this is Charles Barkley, and this is the WFNY podcast. That's terrible.
I'm punchy now. That was great. All right, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me anytime.
And make sure, I was going to say tomorrow, but it doesn't really, days don't matter in the podcast world. Make sure you grab the next podcast, which is Sports Yelling, recapping the 2014 Cleveland Indians season. Yes, Mr. Demoko.
And if you see Joe Banner, you tell him he needs to come on the podcast.
Yeah, you tell him. Joe Banner 13.
Listen,
come on.
Joe Banner, you better get on the WFNY podcast.
Oh, all right. Until next time. It's been what he said. Bye.